Good evening. Welcome. Allow me, please, to call to order the Ferndale City Council meeting of Monday, February the 22nd, 2010. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Council members Baker. Here. Galloway.
Here.
Lennon.
Here.
Piano. Here. And Mayor Covey.
Here as well. All are here, accounted for. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Approval of the agenda.
Thank you. Are there any changes or tweaks to the agenda for tonight? I have one, and that is a request that we swap out A and B and go in the reverse order, B and then A, to allow our staff members that are here to receive their awards to also get home and have dinner with their families. Any objection to that?
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you kindly. Second to that?
Second.
It was Baker, Piana. Motion and second. Madam Clerk?
One moment, Your Honor. Time schedule here. Okay, that would be council members Baker.
Yes.
Galloway.
Yes.
Lennon.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
And Mayor Covey.
Yes as well. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Well, then that brings us to the presentation of Employee Service Awards.
Yes, ma'am, it does. I'm going to ask if Councilwoman Baker, would you be willing to assist me in presenting these awards tonight?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Oh, I don't see it.
Councilwoman, you would help me by finding the plaques. There is some interesting order.
It looks like they're reversed.
Thank you. And what we are doing tonight again this year is to recognize city staff members who are getting service awards for the number of years they have worked for the city of Ferndale. And we're going to start with those who have today being recognized for 10 years of service. And we'll start with Marcia Shear, who is the Director of Community Development Services. And I don't see Marcia here tonight, but she's been with us 10 years. Barb Miller, Clerk Typist of the Department of Recreation. Come on up, Barb. While Barb is coming up, Kathy McClintock with the Assessor Treasurer's Office. Kathy, I think, is here. I'll stay up, and we'll do the 10 years all at once. I'm sorry. We're so casual here. I bet you guys have both been here longer than 10 years. It seems that way, doesn't it? Some part-time years that we don't count. And Corwin Duncan, Public Works, Department of Public Works. Come on up, Corwin. We appreciate all the staff who work for the city of Ferndale so diligently, and particularly reaching 10 years. Corwin, congratulations. Our 3 staff members, plus Marcia Shear, 10 years service to the city. For their 15 years of service to the city, we are going to start with Dennis Emmy, who is a sergeant in the Ferndale Police Department. Also, Laura McGraw, Public Works, Department of Public Works Department. Casey O'Laughlin, who is a lieutenant now with the Ferndale Police Department. And I believe the folks are here. Shane Tack, Sergeant, Ferndale Police Department. Shane, are you here? And Norman Van Sparentek, firefighter, Ferndale Fire Department. All right. Let's give a round of applause for those 15-year veterans. See, I think I'm at 11 years, so I'm not in any of these yet. So, for 20 years service to the city of Ferndale, let's start with Gerald Reiser, Public Works, Department of Public Works. Terry O. Murphy, also Department of Public Works. Patricia Lind, Ferndale Library. Stephen Jennings, Sergeant, Ferndale Police Department. J. Marie Eubanks, Assistant City Manager, Finance Department. And Stephen Carroll, Officer, Ferndale Police Department. And I believe Mike Casey is here, Lieutenant, Ferndale Police Department. Michael here? Don't see him. All right. For those who gave 20 years service to the city so far, let's give them a round of applause as well. For 25 years of service to the city of Ferndale as a captain in our fire department is Kevin Sullivan. Kevin, is he here tonight? I don't see him in the audience. Kevin lost his mother last week, and we all send him our best wishes. A round of applause for our fire department captain, Kevin Sullivan. And finally, for 35 years of service, Public Works Department of Public Works, is William F. Jones. And do we have his son here? What's his son's name, Mike? Well, that's easy enough. Bill Jones. Your dad's worked 35 years for the city of Ferndale. Tell him we said thank you. Thank you kindly. Thanks, Kate, and we will get these awards to the folks. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
That brings us to a presentation by the Downtown Development Authority.
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
And shall I assume that Christine is coming forward?
I'm right here.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. And tonight we have Brian Kramer, who is our DDA Parking Committee Chairperson, who will be making the presentation. And we're going to give you a recap on the community forums that were held and the results that came from that.
How's everybody doing?
Excellent.
Did you ever think I'd be sitting here representing the DDA?
I
Telling
knew you'd
you.
get you.
Come a long way in the last year. I know more about parking than I ever cared to know about. I know more about cities and how they work and budgets and funds and how it all comes together than I ever thought I'd even have to know. The downtown has a goal, and it's to protect all the businesses that are in the downtown. And the problem that we got is the city of Ferndale is holding up a sign, come do business in the city of Ferndale. We're growing, we're expanding, we're sexy, we're great. And all these business owners are coming and doing exactly what we want, and they're investing in the downtown. And what happens is they're investing and we're short parking. And the new guy comes to invest and we're short parking. And the new guy comes to invest and we're short parking. And now we're busting out of this bubble. And we're growing on the backs of the downtown business owners that invested in the city and are trying to be your team members to grow. So that's what this is all about. We had a goal. We wanted to educate business owners, residents, and visitors on parking, DDA priorities, how to stimulate and support local business growth and a new development for the downtown, creating a community paradigm shift in the way that we view parking, use systems, and how it impacts the entire city citywide. We had a call to action to address the parking deficit and management of the system to protect and sustain businesses, improve quality of life for residents, and stimulate economic growth for the city. We currently have 2,548 parking spots available to the downtown. We have a daytime deficit during peak times of 115 spots and an evening deficit of 483 spots. 56% increase in the parking deficit since 2006 in the evening, 52% increase in the parking deficit since 2006 in the afternoon, yet we've had only a 2% increase in the supply of parking since 2006. We can't do anything without the City of Ferndale and the City Commission and the City Manager. You guys own the parking lots. You own and manage the Auto Parking Fund, which supports the parking system. You issue all the permits for development. You issue all the rezoning for development. Without you guys, we can't do anything. System uses. Dollars generated by the parking does not go into the Auto Parking Fund, or not all of it does. Where does it go? It goes to the general fund, and it goes to parking lots outside the Central Business District and the DDA. Our goal is to get more parking. We figure the best way to get more parking is with a parking deck. The paradigm shift we're talking about is the ways that we look at passes, enforcement, meters, parking fines, residential passes, and land use planning. Planning considerations, switch to multi-space meters. Just on this one, I'm going quick for you guys, but on this one, I'm going to stop. Customers are willing to pay more. They don't want the pain in the ass hassle of the quarters. Give us the multi-space meters. Give us the credit cards. It's a small investment for the return. Look at the increase in parking revenues to date. You guys got to get us these multi-space meters. You can get more money. It's worth it. Enforcement in the evening. Again, people are willing to pay in the evening. We just need to find a way to monitor it and keep it simple. Concentrate on parking passes and meters. Increase parking meter revenue. Existing meter lots currently are not metered, some of them. Promote American Legion Hall as free parking location. Residential parking passes and a shuttle program. DDA, what have we done? We're addressing the problem. The problem's not being fixed. We're putting these things on the table. We conducted a parking study in 2006. We conducted a parking structure site analysis of the Willington lot in 2007. City Hall parking lot in 2009 was a joint effort. We formed a DDA parking committee in 2009. We reassessed parking deficits in 2009. We tried launching an employee shuttle. DDA action. We've had joint meetings with the city on 12/7 for parking system improvement needs. We've had a council presentation on 12/14 for parking system improvement needs. We've had DDA parking 2010 goals and objectives formally adopted January 22nd, 2010 by the DDA. We had a DDA resolution for parking priority adopted January 22nd, 2010, which I emailed everybody. We said we want to get everybody's input. It's not just the DDA that's affected, it's the whole city that's affected, it's management of the city that's affected, it's their budgets we're talking about, it's the residents that are affected. So we said, how do we get the word out to everybody? We had 3 community forums. We advertised publicly in the Woodward Talk at sole cost of DDA. We put on the Downtown Ferndale website. We put constant contact e-blast to 1,700 customers. Ferndale Chamber of Commerce member e-blast. Downtown Ferndale Facebook, 2,700 members. 100 posters distributed to downtown, sole cost of DDA. 1,000 postcards handed and distributed to business and residents in the DDA and around the DDA at the sole cost of DDA. Ferndale DDA press release. Media coverage in the Daily Tribune, South Oakland Eccentric, Woodward Talk, Ferndale 115, Detroit Free Press 4 and 7, channels 4 and 7. RIF announced at the January 25th City Council meeting. We had survey, form, and results. We had a total of 287 people respond to our survey. 55 unique attendees, 35 form surveys completed, constant contact online surveys, 1,700 distributed, 252 responded. 63% of the people that responded were residents, 15% businesses, 27% consumers. Form responses consisted of 89% residents and 34% business overlaps. Survey forms and results. Do we have a parking problem? 90% yes. 65% yes online. Affect your quality of life? 50% yes. 29% online. Affect downtown patronage of businesses? Over 52% both online and at the forum responded yes. Lack of parking effects. Survey and form results. The majority solution, how do we fix the parking, was a parking deck. Improved management of parking systems. Improved neighborhood enforcement. Could we consider a parking enforcement officer? Auxiliary police. We contribute 15% of all the tickets written. Why can't we find the police to fund this, to enforce parking in residential neighborhoods? Overflow of trash. In favor of residential parking passes. Don't forget about area downtown residents. Dedicated funds collecting by the parking system to construct a parking deck. We need a multi-step plan, a plan to sustain businesses during construction. DDA creating a residential advisory committee of the DDA parking committee. So we're putting together, the DDA is just about businesses. We're forming a committee with residential owners to meet with the DDA, put our own residential committee together, what's important to them. The DDA is investing investigating how it may contribute and find resources for the parking system. The DDA is meeting with the Planning Commission regarding parking and payment in lieu options. Budget considerations. We're meeting with City Council. We're hoping to be part of the City Parking Committee headed by the City Manager. Talking about redirect parking revenue to the Auto Parking Fund. Dedicated account line item for parking deck capital improvement projects. Adopt a payment in lieu policy for intensification of use in CBD. City release of an RFP for parking structure and finance planning. Study additional financial resources towards the parking structure to help the Auto Parking Fund become self-sufficient in sustaining the annual bond debt. Add the DDA parking chairman to the parking committee representing the businesses and residents who want to serve on our committee. March is going to be a big month for the city. We're going to be getting a budget review from our city manager that I'm sure is going to knock the socks off all of us. We're going to keep parking on the forefront. We're going to keep reminding you guys of that through the entire process. We're willing to do whatever we can to help. In the meantime, if you take anything away from this meeting, we're asking you to stop growing on the backs of business owners and residents that have invested in the downtown. We have a parking problem. Stop growing until we can fix and address the parking problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer. Are there any questions that the council members would like to ask or comment?
Brian, on your demand section of your presentation, where you describe the current supply and the deficit, what exactly does that deficit mean? I assume that, for example, in the daytime deficit of 115 doesn't mean that every single spot is filled, you know, throughout the week and there's 115 cars driving around looking for spots. So what does that, you know, really, you know,
it would be considered daytime peak spots. It would be considered daytime when there's special events. It could be a Saturday where there's a Michigan State game. It could be a funeral. When there's these big events in the downtown and there's major things, it's a daytime problem. Go ahead, Christina.
And also, what it is that we're actually analyzing the amount of square footage in the central business district area, and you do your calculations based on the uses within those square footages to come up with a calculation of how many parking spaces you need for that area. And that's where the deficit is coming from.
Okay, so if we have 100 parking spots, and we know that when Rosie's and Buffalo Wild Wings and Affirmations is filled up, that those three spaces, or that those three buildings require, based on their square footage, 115, then we have a 15 parking spot deficit.
Correct.
That might not be actually correct if everybody, if 100% of the people walk, but we're making some assumptions to get to that 115. It's not an actual count. Is that correct?
It's not a occupancy turnover analysis. We've done those before in the past, and obviously you then take your deficit analysis based on your square footage and your usage, and then you also position that against your turnover and occupancy rates. If the city would want to do another turnover occupancy study, that could be conducted, but we did do the one in 2006. That could give you kind of a little bit of a snapshot of what was happening as well.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, and again, this slide number 5, I believe, showing demand, that assumes 100% usage of facility on at peak times. When that happens,
yes, it's based on square footage.
and
So
you
it's
assume
based on the
everybody
square footage.
is
Yes.
driving a car, or every 1.5 people are
On
driving
the
a
use,
car?
yes, it's based on usage for that space in that area. And then as well as then the increases that you see in that next slide is showing you how the uses in the downtown have changed in just 3 years. So we need to be just as nimble, I think, as our uses are.
Okay. So somebody has a factor that people who drive to see football games on Saturday in Ferndale typically, on average, drive 2 people to a car, and then that's factored into this number. Based on the square footage of Buffalo Wild Wings, divided by that factor is how many parking spots you need?
How many seats in a restaurant?
Yeah.
Based on, your tabletops, also your occupancy rate of your buildings, and national averages for types of businesses, whether it's a hair salon or what have you. And plus, you go based on your own zoning ordinances in terms of what you're showing as requirements in non-CBD areas, so C2 areas, C3.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks. Christina or Brian, we recently changed the timing where we charge meters and enforce meters up to 10 o'clock at night, I believe, to capture some of the club and bar goers. I'm guessing, and I don't know for a fact, that we don't enforce. Do you know when ticketing stops, or is that something we should explore to find out if adding another ticket person maybe at night, like at 8, 9, 9:30 o'clock?
Those are obviously our heavier times, and it would make sense, but we would really have to, obviously work closely with the chief of police to determine, schedules as to what their current schedule is and how that is being handled. But basically, you have people, 2 people that are working enforcement on a 6-day work week.
Right. I guess I'm wondering if we should explore even a third person, and it may or may not have to be someone who works through the police department. Again, I'm just trying to be open-minded here, but are there some cities where the parking enforcement folks work under the DDA or for the Department of Public Works? And, with unemployment as high as it is, it might behoove us to hire a young person or a person who might choose to work at night and could fill in the nighttime hours, particularly on the weekends, and then that would remind people to feed the meters, which would then also bring up income for the eventual building of a parking deck.
I guess the communities that I'm aware of where a parking enforcement officer would work for, say, like the DDA, it's where the DDA is actually managing the entire system as well.
But it could
But
also.
yeah, there's that option, obviously.
It could be a third person through the police department who, and again, you could study how many tickets and how much more income would be generated that would offset the cost of that person who might make $10 an hour.
And I think that your goal as a parking enforcement officer is not necessarily to get out there and write more tickets all the time. It's to get people to do the right thing and feed the meter.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
So
nothing like a
so.
few tickets to remind people that 10 o'clock. Because on a Saturday night is when the peak hours are, and you've got 500 people at Boogie Fever and all the other clubs who may not be feeding meters.
Right. And the multi-space meters would also probably help towards that, where you can actually pre-program your multi-space meters so that they go into later hours, into the evening. Also, you could capture a flat fee after a certain time of the evening. And it also hopefully makes it a little bit easier for the enforcement officer to find who is expired in terms of an expired meter.
Mayor Covey?
Yes, sir.
A satisfied customer made this paycheck possible. You don't want customers to feel nickel and dimed.
Right.
I'm begging you, if you even consider that. People don't have the change. You've got to invest. Give us the multi-meters. I should be sitting here fighting you and saying, no, I don't want enforcement after 10. I realize the bigger picture, Brian, is the money's got to come from somewhere.
It wouldn't be after 10. It would be from that 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock that I don't think we're enforcing now in the evenings.
You are some days, and you could enforce more. I can't go to Royal Oak and not get a ticket. It's a given. And that's driven me to the structure.
Right.
Whether I'm going to a city hall meeting, you just know it's not going to be an hour. So you find the faraway parking lot that's 4 hours, or you're going a block away and you're parking in the structure and you're having a friend pick you up and take you to city hall. The people that are charging later give their customers options. In most towns, I can't say all of them, but most of them, it's $2, $3, $4 to park in a structure. It's a flat fee. You pull in, you pay. In Ferndale, we don't have a structure. We have to get to a structure. I'm just begging you, if you consider charging later, even after 10 o'clock, which you can do. Mm-hmm. Just the multi-space meter, there's small investment. You're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. You probably have the money in the auto parking fund now.
I think we need to go there.
And the benefit of the multi-space meters, if I pull into a parking spot now at 9 o'clock at night, and let's assume that a girl with a big purse was in front of me parked there, and she had a ton of quarters, and she filled up with $4. But when I pull in, there's 3 hours left, I don't pay. With the multi-space meter, you don't know that they paid. So it's like double dicking. But it's fine if you give us the option with a credit card to just swipe it. We don't want to deal with it. Thank you.
people who don't have money, right?
Would have
Change.
cash.
Carry.
Quarters.
Quarters. We have the cash.
Councilwoman?
A quick question for Brian and Christina, although I think you've probably just answered the question. I was talking with Councilman Galloway this weekend, and we were talking about one of the proposed changes. I know Bob Bruner talked about it at the parking forums, that we'll see in the upcoming budget is a proposal that all of the money that comes into the auto parking fund now stays in the auto parking fund. So it's another about $200,000 a year. And I was talking with Scott about it, and he said, gosh, it seems like a lot of money, and we're taking it out of the general fund, and what would it pay for? Would it just go to the parking structure? And I said, from my understanding, one of the things that would go to first are some of these updates that we need immediately, like multi-space meters and converting out some of our quarter-only meters into the multi-space meters. Is that part of the thinking, that the money, yes, would go to, build up a fund for a parking structure, but we've got other improvements that we need to make at the same time?
I think that there has to be a holistic plan, definitely, and there's things that you have to do first before you can do the next. And I think the multi-space meters are obviously like one of those first things. I think that the things that we've shown you, though, in previous presentations, it is critical to get that parking ticket revenue, all of it, into the auto parking fund to even get close to making the bond debt. And I think that, yes, you have to keep your eye on the prize and know what you need to get to, but there are definitely some other steps that we have to take along the way, too. So.
Thank you.
One last question, Brian or Christine. Mr. Wolfson, who built the lofts across the street here, is still interested in talking with us about development and possibly sharing in the cost or helping us pay for a parking deck. Are we still in consultation with Mr. Wolfson?
Yes, we are. But also, at the same sense, you need to know that any developer coming in is going to be asking for something in return.
Right.
And I think that's, one of our first presentations is to kind of get out of that mindset of thinking that somebody's always going to give it to us. We got to start planning for the future.
I'm looking at sharing costs and sharing, but okay. As long as the conversations are going on and we're not.
We have met with him.
Okay, good. Or other developers.
He had felt with the economic climate that getting financing and finding people to rent it out would be a challenge at this point in time.
He seems to think there are tax benefits as well to sharing and such, so. Thank you. Anything else for Mr. Kramer or Ms. Shepherd-Decius?
I had one question.
Yes, ma'am.
I know the DDA is looking at also additional revenues to bring in through the DDA, whether it be grants, incentives, and I was wondering, when do you think you will have something ready for council to consider as part of our budget considerations?
I couldn't give you a date on that. I have already started collecting some of the information, and we still need to meet with MEDC, but the sooner I know a deadline as to when we're going to be meeting with council regarding auto parking fund, it gets us a little bit more of a deadline to put on them, so we can say, okay, we need to meet with you by X date, because we have to get a couple of the partners in the room together from MEDC for that.
Okay. And Bob, is it possible to give a date or estimate a date? Are we looking at March or are we looking at April?
I'll be firming up the budget schedule on March 8th when the budget's presented.
But specifically for the auto parking fund, you were talking about a direct discussion about that, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the schedule will include dates and what funds, what departments will be discussing on each date throughout the process.
Thank you.
If nothing else, thank you for the extensive work you've done in the presentation and the forums. Thank you for hosting those forums at your
You're welcome.
fine establishment.
Thank you.
Oh, and turn the bass down a little bit at Rosie's, would you? The bass, just a little bit. Well, we got you here. Somebody's getting a headache. All right. Madam Clerk, what item is next?
Call to audience, Your Honor.
The called audience is a 30-minute presentation, ability of members of the audience to speak up to 3 minutes each or less. We ask that you state your name and address, verbally or written in the back. It can only address issues that are not on tonight's agenda, and we ask that you be courteous and respect the integrity of all people. Mr. Trevor Johnson, I presume.
Hello, council members. It's nice to see you again. It's been a little hiatus since I've been up here, but there's been lots of planning going on in the background, and I'm sure you've heard about one of the things I'm doing, which is the Royal Oak Community Farm. And we're going to be opening up this spring with a 30-member CSA. The CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. This turns the current food model on its butt. So rather than paying for the food when you get it at the store, you pay the farmer directly to grow the food for you. We have 30 shares available. Full shares for a family of 4 are $6.15, and half shares are available for $3.35. And you get every vegetable imaginable, even kohlrabi. Anyone heard kohlrabi?
What do you do with kohlrabi?
Yeah, I love it raw.
Okay.
Kohlrabi raw is awesome. You've had kohlrabi? Awesome. We're going to start in the spring with our radishes, spinach, lettuce, scallions, and every vegetable you can imagine. I just got done picking our tomatoes, and I'm really excited about the heirlooms I've chosen. So I have applications available in the back if you're interested. And I also would like to plant a little seed in all your ears. This is my partner, David Baldwin. And we've taken on this project, and all the profits are going to be going to the Royal Oak school system. All of our profits pass what we pay to make the farm run. And we're in conversation right now to start a standalone business. It's independent of a school board or anything like that. And we like Ferndale. So I would just want to let you know that we're going to be in contact with each of you to get feedback about its viability, what you think the barriers might be, and any information you'd like to give us, because we think Ferndale is ripe for this, and we'd love to start producing food for the restaurants and for the local businesses, grocery stores. Yes. So are there any questions from council?
You think we're ripe for this? Is that what you said?
I do think you're ripe for this, yes.
All right. Thank you. Well, we're ready for spring, so if you can move it along, we're ready. We're all ready to start.
I'll try my best.
All right, cool. Thanks.
Thank you, council.
Mayor Covey, council members all, my name is Ryan Gilmore, Ferndale Out/1588. Briefly, in May of 2009, we had the celebration of honoring all of our veterans who have served in Iraq, Afghanistan, called Hanging with the Heroes. In December, I came before you and mentioned that we had sent off a number of Christmas gifts, and it was received by the United States Marine Wing Support Group 47. I'm happy to report they are home safely. So on March 12th, which is a Friday evening, starting at 6 p.m., once again, the Ferndale Elks will host Hanging with the Heroes, a Welcome Home celebration. This is a privately funded event, open to the public. We would like to see everyone come on down to the Elks and join us in welcoming these true heroes home. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Are you going to do some of this outdoors and then move into the outdoors?
Yes. We'll have a program outdoors to begin, band playing, honoring all of the Marines. We have had their flag flying on our flagpole since the day that they left.
Sure.
We'll bring it down and present it to them. And then inside afterwards will be food and beverages.
So you'll talk with the police chief and any other city officials in terms of getting the road blocked off there at Bester, what have you.
Already covered, sir.
It was a great event. I'm going to be out of town. I'm going to ask, hopefully, if Councilwoman Mayor Pro Tem Baker might be able to take my place, but some of the other council members will be there as well. Thank you for doing that for our men and women.
And please bring the kids as well. Kids, grandchildren. This is a wonderful time for them to get to see what true heroes are. It's not the philandering athlete. It's not the performer, actor, singer that spends half their life in rehab. It's the men and women that voluntarily serve our countries. Thank you.
Good evening. The Reverend Bob Luxon, First Baptist Church of Ferndale. My congregation has asked that I come forward and ask your council members and to please take a good look at cutting our police force. They're very concerned. Most of our members are city residents, elderly, some with children, and I've been a part of this community for 60 years now. I've seen some really bad times, and I've seen a lot of good growth. And I think it might be harmful to the community, listening to the downtown area that want to continue to grow. I think we have one of the finest forces in the community, and I strongly urge you, if at all possible, I know it's a tough decision you just have to make, to really look at it very carefully. All right?
Thank you, Reverend.
Thank you.
Good evening. I am Robert Jones, the Director of External Affairs at AT&T, and I just wanted to come out and introduce myself to this honorable body this evening. I have met Mayor Covey on several occasions, but I just wanted to come out and introduce myself to all of you. I am the legislative liaison from AT&T and have responsibility for the municipality of Ferndale. Now, this is not my first time in your fair city. I want you to know that I used to work in Ferndale back in 1972 through 1974 at Squirt Detroit Bottling Company, which was at 515 Wanda Avenue. And I was there for a few years, and Ferndale is a great community. So I just wanted to come out and introduce myself to you this evening, and I'm going to leave my card. I didn't have, I'd handed out a few, because I've been out all day, but I at least want to bring one, and I will make sure to have enough for everyone when I return to this honorable body. And I thank you for this time.
Good to see you, Mr. Jones.
You too, sir.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Angela Twist, 331 East Webster. I'm here and I'm concerned about the possible reduction in the police department. I know you are all in a hard position with the financial cuts from our state and all of that, but I encourage you to exhaust all other options besides cutting our police department. I was looking at the proposal for the parking, and I saw one of their goals was to protect businesses, improve quality of life, and sustain economic growth. And I just wanted to remind you, as I'm sure you know, that without our phenomenal police department, that won't be possible. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Twist.
My name is Leslie Coxon. I live at 169 University Street here in Ferndale. I'm here on behalf of the Ferndale Environmental Sustainability Commission to present our green tip for the month of February, which is limit your embodied energy with green grocery shopping. To give you some background, embodied energy is the amount of energy used to create a product, package it, ship it to the store, and then for you to go to the store and get it back to your house. For example, if I buy imported olive oil from Italy, the embodied energy includes the fuels used to make the fertilizers and pesticides to grow the olives, then the fuels used to process the olives and package it, fuels used to make the bottle and any of the packaging materials, and also the shipping packaging, fuels used to ship the olives or the olive oil for 4,700 miles from Italy to Michigan. And finally, the fuel I put in my car to drive to the store to go pick it up and bring it back. So when shopping, you should try to choose products that have the lowest embodied energy by following these tips. Number one, buy seasonal produce. Crops that are in season have lower embodied energy since they can be grown closer to Michigan. They are also great for stretching your grocery budget because in-season crops are always on sale. They are the best nutritional choice as well because crops that are imported have to be picked and shipped green, which degrades their nutritional value. To see a chart of seasonal produce, go to the Center for Urban Education about Sustainable Agriculture's website. That's at cuesa.org. Number two, check the manufacturing label. When choosing between similar brands, pick the one that was produced closest to Michigan. As a bonus, if you choose a product made or grown in Michigan, you can feel good about supporting our local economy. Number three, buy organic. Organic farms use natural fertilizing and pest control techniques. Chemical fertilizers and pesticides in their own right have very high embodied energies. Number 4, pay attention to what kind of packaging it's in. Avoid buying products that are packaged in plastic. As you know, plastic is manufactured with petroleum, which is a non-renewable resource. Opt for products that are packaged in glass or metal because they are easily recycled almost in every community, especially here in Ferndale. They're very easy to recycle. Number 5, buy in bulk. Bulk items produce less waste than individually packaged and single-serving products. They are also cheaper per serving. Number 6, bring your own shopping bags. This is one of my personal favorites. The new shopping bags that you buy in stores are a much better choice than plastic bags, but they still have a pretty high embodied energy because the majority of them are produced overseas, usually in China. So the best option is to repurpose a tote bag that you already own and use that for your shopping. As an additional plastic saving tip, when you go to the produce section, instead of getting the plastic vegetable baggies off the roll, start recycling or reusing your old onion bags. So you can just throw your apples and stuff into that bag and use that instead. And finally, number 7, obviously walk or bike to the store, and that removes a little additional amount of embodied energy that you produce in driving. To find this and other green tips, visit the City of Ferndale website. The FBSC meets the first Monday of every month at 6:30 at the Kulik Center. The meeting is open to the public, so you're all welcome to join. Our Green Tuesday events will start in April and will be held on the second Tuesday of every month at 6:30 at the Kulik Center. Keep an eye out because we're distributing calendars soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice information. So instead of, say, buying imported beer from Germany, it would be better to walk to the WAB and have a glass that they've made right over there. Maybe made from grain at Trevor Johnson's farm in Royal Oak.
Not better, best tip ever.
All right. There you go.
Hello, City Council members and viewers. My name is Julie Glazier. I sit in the Publicity Committee for Ferndale Youth Assistance. In the past, I've come to these meetings to inform everyone of upcoming events, but tonight I would like to give you a little information about our program and answer any questions you might have. Currently, Ferndale Youth Assistance has 45 open cases. This means that 45 children are currently receiving assistance from our program to either prevent juvenile delinquent behavior, which is about 50% of our cases, or to redirect children to positive activities who are at risk of becoming involved with the formal family court system, which is the other 50% of the cases. Referrals to the program come from the schools, Ferndale Police Department, and parents. Some of the students we work with have truancy issues, and some of the students live in at-risk environments, which make them eligible for our program. Providing funds for recreational activities for these children has helped to either keep children in a good path in life or redirect them to a more positive path. There have been some changes to the funding stream for youth assistance. There's now a small fee the families must pay to access our services, but we want everyone to know that if a family cannot pay, we do have some resources to cover these charges. Any questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much and have a good night.
Nice job. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else wish to speak? The audience. Ann Heller, nothing to share tonight? All right.
Hi, good evening. Ann Heller, 1024 Leroy, speaking as president of Board of Directors for FernCare. I came up here before to talk about an event that we were going to hold on February 15, which was a little different for Ferndale. It was classical music and opera. I am here to tell you it was a sold-out event. Yes, it was wonderful. Heidi Schmidt, a resident of Ferndale who is going to med school and has a fine and beautiful voice and has studied opera. It was just wonderful. Hans Barbet from Hazel Park playing classical piano, wonderful. And then we had a treat. We had a jazz trombonist and his wife who accompanied Heidi play. It was a wonderful, wonderful evening. It was very, very lovely. And I have to say thank you to everybody that came. And, of course, thank you to Maria's front room. They liked it so much and had so so much fun themselves, they would like to make this an annual event. So that was kind of, we were very, very pleased. This weekend, there's no end to the fundraising for Fern Care at all. This weekend, we're leaving Ferndale, and we're going to Hazel Park. We're going to be there Friday night and Saturday night. Wait till you hear this, 5 p.m. until 1 a.m. both nights. The owners of Phoenix Cafe have found a ton of local bands that are going to play for Fern Care. There's going to be a 50-50 raffle and a number of things that's going to happen. It's $10 at the door, and then the raffle, and just have a great time. Some of the bands are bands that have played for us before. A couple of them, Emily Rose, people need, if you have not heard her, she is just excellent. She's just excellent. Bobby Pinnock, who's played in 4 of our fundraisers for us. And we've got the Rockefellers this time. And you can imagine, enough bands to fill from 5 until 1 both nights. So please, Phoenix Cafe is easy to find. It's on John R., literally just south of 696 on the east side. The address is 24918 John R. There's a building that looks like an old white castle, and then right next door is Phoenix Cafe. You park in the back. A very nice place. Similar in touch to AJ's, kind of. It's a coffee house. It's a very casual. So please, this Friday and Saturday, I'd like to see you there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Heller. Seeing no other folks coming up for this portion, we will move on from call to audience, Madam Clerk.
We move on to the consent agenda, Your Honor. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held February 8th. B, approval to adopt a resolution encouraging the research of placement of an additional crosswalk on Woodward Avenue at or near the Withington/Vester intersection. Item C, approval to authorize the police department to eliminate the parking restriction on the east side of Livernois between Fielding and Marshfield. Item D, approval to authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign the search and rescue emergency response vehicle interlocal agreement with Oakland County. Item E, approval of the observance of Memorial Day on Monday, May 31st, 2010, with the annual Memorial Day Parade is organized by the Ferndale Memorial Association. The contribution of $400 payable to the association is budgeted in the special event account, and to authorize the mayor to sign the agreement between the City of Ferndale and the Ferndale Memorial Association for the association to organize the parade. And finally, item F, approval of the bills and payrolls as certified by the city manager to be paid subject to review by the Council Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. You're very fast on reading those. Not enough
I can
time
slow
to
down.
Eat a carrot. I barely had time. Locally grown. What items would council members or audience members like to withdraw for further discussion?
I'd like to draw item C, please.
Yes, ma'am. Councilwoman Kiana pulls item C. Anything else? A motion for the rest of them then to be adopted?
I would move the consent agenda in its entirety with the exception of item C.
Support.
Thank you. Councilman Galloway moves and Baker seconds adoption of the consent agenda A, B, D, E, and F. Discussion, Madam Clerk?
Councilmembers Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon is absent. Piana?
Yes.
Baker? Yes. And Mayor Covey?
Yes, thank you. And if I may, I appreciate the adoption of the resolution encouraging the crosswalk. I just learned from Ferndale115.com that the individual did pass away, and that's very sad. So appreciate this going on to see what we can do. Madam Clerk, what's next, please?
We have regular agenda item A, consideration of 2010 Class C liquor license renewals.
Thank you. Mr. Brunner, are you going to introduce?
Yes, Your Honor. This is the annual rite of spring. All full-year liquor licenses expire on June 30th of each calendar year, and the City Council has an opportunity to file timely objections with the Michigan Liquor Control Commission if it has a reason for taking such a position. You have received reports from the Fire Department, the Community Development Department, the Public Works Department, the Oakland County Health Department, Police Department, as well as the Assessor Treasurer's Office regarding the issue or lack of issues with each liquor license holder in the city. The recommended action tonight is to receive those reports, make them a matter of record, to schedule the public hearing for Monday, March 22nd, and direct the city attorney to send notice to those liquor licenses establishments for which the city has reason to object to their renewal. In the past, the public hearing has been scheduled for the first meeting in March, but last year the council wanted to move that back to the second meeting to give more time for the license holders to clear up those items that need to be resolved before the public hearing. So it's your discretion whether you want to schedule that for the 22nd or the first meeting, I think, which would be the 8th.
Very good. Request for information from the council members. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. At what time would we then consider, I mean, since tax liabilities aren't delinquent until after March 1st, at what time would we consider the list or add to this list people who may be delinquent in their taxes? Would we wait until March 22nd to do that?
Yeah. If I could, the proposal before council is to have it at the second meeting in March, which would afford the assessor treasurer to complete a updated list subsequent to the March 1st deadline for payment of those delinquent taxes, since they're not technically delinquent until after such time. So he would provide a notice after March 1st. I would then provide those establishments that were delinquent or had any of the other violations outstanding and notify them of the public hearing for the second meeting in March.
So that would happen
That's
in the interim?
That's the preferable method.
Great. That would happen in the interim. We wouldn't have to wait until March 22nd to authorize that action?
No.
Okay.
Very good. Does that answer your question, Councilwoman?
That it does.
Very good. Other questions for the city manager or others? If not, is there a motion?
I'll move to receive the report and make it a matter of record, and also direct that the public hearing be scheduled for Monday, March 22nd, 2010 at 7:30 p.m. regarding the non-renewal Class C liquor licenses, and the city attorney's office prepare and have served appropriate legal notice of the scheduled hearing to the above listed establishments that are in question and/or those establishments that are delinquent in paying taxes that are due on Friday, February 26, 2010, according to the assessor treasurer's report as of noon on Wednesday, March 3rd, 2010.
Support.
Well done. Councilman Lennon, seconded by Baker. Discussion? Madam Clerk?
Council members Lennon?
Yes.
Fiana?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
And Mayor Covey?
Yes as well. That passes unanimously, Madam Clerk. Next item.
Takes us back to consent agenda item C.
Righto. Chief Kitchen, sir, would you mind introducing item C regarding parking?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd be pleased to. The traffic control officer received a request from a business owner on the east side of Livernois between Fielding and Marshfield to remove the restricted parking on the east side of Livernois in the northbound lanes. He did a traffic study and discovered that basically that the traffic count volume did support that removal, and he also consulted with Bob DeCourty from the Traffic Improvement Association, who concurred, and then being that it is a four-lane road with a left turn lane in the middle, and the traffic counts have gone down dramatically over the years. In fact, I inspected it personally today, and basically our recommendation is pretty solid, that these restrictions be removed, and concurring with that, your other option is if you wish to schedule a public hearing so that people can be notified. In this instance, it's not really my recommendation. I don't see any adverse effect or anyone who will be disaffected by it, but it's certainly your prerogative. And I did get a list of questions from Councilwoman Piana, and And since she pulled it, it looks like she wants to ask a few more, and I'll be happy to discuss it.
Thank you, Chief. Go ahead, Matt.
I believe you CC'd everybody on council about your responses to these questions. And I just wanted to have a conversation and let people know that the DDA is responsible for parking in the downtown, but the police department is responsible for parking outside of the areas of the downtown, correct? And I wanted to just ask for additional information when we have these types of consent agendas that come to council. It would be really helpful to have just the little bit of detail that I had asked for, like how many new spaces will be created on Livernois by allowing or removing the parking restriction. And Chief Kitchen has replied that there are 52 spaces that will be created.
About.
Right?
About.
About, approximately. I know there's no striping, so it's a little bit difficult to really gauge how many will be there. And then my other question is that these restrictions have existed for decades, and so I'm wondering, do you think we'll have more restrictions to remove in the future? Since the traffic patterns have changed on Livernois, I'm wondering if we should consider removing all of them, or is there some, a better approach to looking at parking on Livernois? And I ask this because I got married at a gallery on Livernois, and I had to ask special permission with the police department to use and park after hours on Livernois. So maybe the demand is changing, and so I'm just wondering, should we have a more holistic approach to the parking on Livernois?
A holistic approach to parking.
Well,
I haven't heard that one before.
Well, I think I would call the DDA's approach to parking right now a holistic approach. They're looking at all the avenues of why parking is changing and solutions to doing that. So I was just wondering.
We are all about removing restrictions and signs and things like that. But generally what happens is someone like this gentleman, and I looked and I don't know what took him, but he asked for that. We don't go out and look necessarily for these unless someone requests it, and he requested it. He followed all the procedures, and it makes perfect sense in this instance. Now, 15 years ago, that was a bustling boulevard, and it probably didn't. That's probably the reason it was restricted at that time. But this segues into your next question about what's left, and that would mean no parking south to 8 Mile. Although there's nothing, all those buildings are pretty much vacant, we would have no reservation about removing the parking restriction there as well. But we're generally reactive in these modes because unless someone makes a request, we don't know. I mean, someone may not like this idea, but everything that we've evaluated and counted and looked at that makes sense for this, and a substantial amount of parking, not necessarily at where the request was made, but it opens it up, and there is plenty of room nowadays with the way the traffic patterns are. So if holistic means, do we seek out areas? Not necessarily. If anyone in the listening audience wants a traffic change, it's a simple form, make the request, we'll do the study.
Okay. I mean, that's all really the question I had. I'm hoping that, it sounds like piecemeal, it's kind of being piecemealed along Livernois, right?
That's the way, well, it won't be now. It's virtually all open parking now, other than the one stretch south of, between Fielding and 8 Mile.
Okay.
And we can, if council wants me to pull those, I will. There's 2 signs there. Take DPW, 30 seconds to get them down. I have no objection. But there's nothing occupied there, and I don't expect anyone to park there at the moment.
Okay. I actually have a sign question, and it may actually just be a sign direction if the council thinks that this is a good idea. The chief counted and said that there are 5 no parking signs in this particular area, and I wondered, because I find this particularly helpful in Midtown where I work in Detroit. If we wanted to just, rather than take those down completely, change them to parking allowed signs. This is a long-standing no parking situation. Simply taking a sign down might not give a cue to the business owners or to people looking at some of those vacant properties that parking is now allowed.
Can we afford those signs?
The DPW makes our signs.
Okay.
That would be a Byron question, not a Chief Kitchen question.
Okay, I think that is something I support too, because it is, 50 years of no parking? All of a sudden, parking's allowed?
What about leaving 1 or 2 up that says parking allowed and getting rid of 3? Because
I
I'm,
know this area better than me.
well, I just think signs, the fewer the signs, the better.
Yes.
But leaving 1 or 2 up might work, and I don't know if Byron is listening or if he's even here.
He's not here, Your Honor, but I will
Could
take
you see that, is that okay? I don't mean to, is that a consensus that 1 or 2 stay up that say parking allowed and maybe 3 come down? All right. You got your questions answered, Councilman?
Chief, it looks like we did a number of traffic counts on here. I assume that's by laying the hose or whatever across the road. And then an opinion referred to us by Officer LaRoe. Is this something that TIA could have done? I mean, we're paying for that anyhow. Why not just kick this whole thing to TIA? It's money, sort of paid over.
Typically, I'll check with LaRoe, but we establish the counts and they analyze it. So we have the hardware, they analyze the results, and then compare it to their baseline numbers and things like that. So they're basically analysts. I don't think they actually place the counting devices. We do that.
Okay. And has Livernois been evaluated at all for appropriateness of bike lanes at all?
I don't know if that request's ever been made.
All right. Well, perhaps that's something we want to look into. It worked out pretty well.
Okay.
I think it was discussed as a future possible bike lane area back when we were doing the bike lanes and that, but that seems to have kind of.
I think it was one of the.
Next.
I'm not sure if the whole study was done, but I think it was on the list.
We could ask Julie Hall to look for that old report, or maybe Mr. Bruner, but because I know Camborne was also one of the streets next in line. We might think about that, and it might save on parking. Thanks, Chief. I don't think I see any other questions then. Councilwoman Piana, your questions were answered, and does anyone wish then to make a motion with regards to item C?
I would move that we authorize the police department to eliminate the parking restriction on the east side of Livernois between Fielding and Marshfield, and review with the DPW department and the city manager's office the appropriateness of installing bike lanes on Livernois south of 9 Mile.
And parking allowed signs.
And establishing appropriate number of parking allowed signs.
I support.
Well done. Councilman Galloway makes the motion. Piana seconds the motion. Discussion. Madam Clerk.
Council members Piana?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Mayor Covey?
Yes as well. Passes unanimously. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Chief.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, Chief.
We have the council appointee report from our fire chief.
Thank you. Chief Roger Schmidt, Ferndale Fire Department Chief.
Thank you, Your Honor. I sent you all a hard copy, but I just want to touch on the highlights and then answer any questions you might have. Biggest goal that we had this year, and I'm very pleased to say it's 99% complete, is the switch over to the new 800 megahertz radio system. We've had a couple little hiccups along the way, but for the most part it's been working out very well. A couple of our neighbors now have come on board, and they are experiencing some learning curve problems, and as soon as they get up to speed, all the problems should go away. It's a case now of when they come to our city or we go to their city, their dispatchers are not too familiar with putting up the patch that's necessary, but they're learning the technique, and that should soon be solved. On the regionalization effort, there's not too much new to report. We met this summer and late into the fall with couple of our state representatives, Ms. Donegan from Royal Oak and Ms. Lipton from Ferndale, who is actually here this evening. I don't know whether they were going to look at some legislative help. I don't know whether there's anything new that she would like to report on that or not. I regret to say I'm not too optimistic that we're going to see anything by the end of the year, but maybe she could fill us in a little better.
Well, you know what? I'm going to ask her to speak during call to council.
Okay.
If she would like to share any updates on anything at all.
That'd be fine. All right, I'll move on. We're still waiting to hear on 2 grants, one for the dispatch or the tone-out system, the 3-city tone-out system, and our vehicle exhaust system. No word from FEMA. We're checking the site almost daily to find out if we're going to get some help from the governments. One of the last things that I hadn't finished as of my last report was a needs assessment of our tools and equipment. We're in pretty good shape. We've spent a little bit of money outfitting this new truck, which has freed up some equipment to put on the other trucks, and so we're in pretty good shape. One gray area over the next couple of years that will be expensive is going to be replacing our turnout gear. We got all new turnout gear 5 years ago with a FEMA grant, and it's starting to show the first signs of age. We've had to replace 4 or 5 sets already. It's about $2,000 a set to replace. We're going to have to probably ramp up the replacement process over the next couple of years because it's starting to wear out. The other report on that was I would have told you that our fleet was in excellent condition. We had made a proposal to Royal Oak Township to buy their truck. They have decided to turn our offer down, and they are going to try to sell the truck on the open market. They believe they can get a better price than what we were offering. I've told them if that doesn't work out, please come back and see us, not to be embarrassed. But we had offered them what we thought was a reasonable figure and asked for credit for the lease payments we've made, and I believe the lease payment credit was a big stumbling block. They didn't want to give us credit for that. So they're trying to sell it on the open market, which means we're going to put our old 1992 truck back into service as a reserve truck. It's still very serviceable. So our fleet's in good shape, not excellent shape, but just have to work around it. Any questions?
I have one for you, Chief, and that is about consolidation. We've seen in the papers lots of cities talking about the absolute importance of consolidation, and it's been on our list, and it's been part of your goals for a number of years to see how we can continue to increase our sharing of services. And now we see that the Hazel Park, Madison Heights consolidation seems to be in some trouble, or at least seems to be slowing down. I met with Mr. Klobuchar the other day, who still is very interested in talking to Ferndale. Have you talked with him lately?
I have not. I got your email. I haven't contacted him yet. Mr. Bruner had asked for comments on the city adopted goals that we had, adopted back in December, and one of the things that I put in there was that I think that we really, if this is going to happen, and I still think we should try to do the 3-city merger, that we really need to get the electeds from all 3 cities and the managers, and I think the fire chiefs are behind it 100%. We need to get it, re-energize it somehow, try to find a way to get around this dispatch problem, and otherwise I'm not sure where it's going to go.
Please.
Perhaps we could cut right to the chase. Bob, for the next meeting, could you adopt a resolution? This councilman would certainly support a resolution of public support by the elected officials for investigating, joint fire services, and we can pass that and something like that. What you're looking for, Chief?
Yeah, and I think, we talked about the possibility of a dedicated millage for police and fire services. Well, why not talk about a fire authority millage? Maybe this is the right time to explore that and try to get this off dead center.
Well, so if you could work with the city manager to come up with proper language to at least give you the authority you need in order to talk to Hazel Park and perhaps Madison Heights and their fire departments, there should be no misunderstanding from anybody that this council is interested in having the conversation. Where it leads to, is a different question, but we're interested in the conversation.
I would even say a strong resolution showing strong support and open to any variety of methods or ways to achieve that end. And we will copy that to all of our electeds, one of whom is here. We'll hear from her in a moment, our state representative, but copies to Madison Heights, the mayor, the council, the city manager. Same with Hazel Park, right, Councilman?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we still have this sticky problem of the dispatch. I'm not sure what the solution is going to be, but...
Well, we need to explore and find a solution. There must be a solution. All right, thank you, Chief. Anything else for the fire chief? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Madam Clerk, next item.
Council liaison reports, if any.
I have none tonight. Mr. Bruner, any council liaison reports?
Nothing from me tonight, Your Honor.
Any council members have anything to update or share on any of those groups, organizations? Very good. Madam Clerk, next item.
Call to council, Your Honor.
Thank you. Julie Hall, the Director of the Ferndale Recreation Department and Community Center.
Mayor and Council, I just wanted to come up and thank the Emory for their support of our Daddy-Daughter Dance. We had our participants, well over 70 participants this year, and the pre-dance dinner was a great success. So that's a partnership they're looking to expand with other events of ours, a great public-private partnership. And then I also want to thank Dennis Hepner, who is on our Parks and Rec Advisory Board and very active in the Ferndale Seniors, who secured the donation of a pool table for our teen center. So our teens have been enjoying the use of a pool table that cost us nothing. So I wanted to thank him.
How's Dennis doing? Is he good?
He's doing much better. He's out of the hospital. So.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, Councilwoman Baker and I just happened to be at the Emory the night of the
So darn
daddy-daughter gathering there, and it was very, very cute. Very nice. A lot of people.
Yeah. Thanks.
Chief Roger Schmidt, anything else from the fire department? Thank you. Byron Fotides, Department of Public Works. You all been out plowing snow, I assume?
Yeah, that's why, Your Honor, I wanted to remind residents that even though we finished the city this evening, there is still a snow emergency. There are still vehicles that have not been moved since this morning, and you risk getting ticketed or having your vehicle towed tomorrow. Also, we'll be doing the parking lots tonight, and there is a city ordinance that we ask that any vehicles not be parked there between 3 and 7 a.m. Will be in shortly after 3 a.m. to be plowing those lots. So if everybody could help us out, we'd appreciate it.
Great job. Thanks, Byron. Police Chief Mike Kitchen, what do you have else to talk with us about, sir?
Just briefly, Your Honor, last Thursday it was our pleasure to host Congressman Levin in this room with a group of county and regional-wide police chiefs and directors and officials, and Sandy wanted to discuss a technology earmark that he was proud of, that he was able to bring our way, and we were able to demonstrate with Officer Spellman's help there, Mr. Talking Head himself, a portable fingerprint device where officers can positively identify suspects and unknown people on the street. Sandy seemed delighted when he was fingerprinted and came up clear. So that was a nice event, and we think it did. Some earmarks sometimes get a bad rap, and this particular one's a good one, and we were happy to reinforce Sandy on that day. I'm also happy to report that relative to our radio system, we had a new tower just for us in Hazel Park installed along 8 Mile. And we have the best penetration capability of anybody on the new system in the county. We went in the tunnels in the high school and all the way to Hamtramck, and the radios work wonderfully. So we're very pleased to report that, and we were very pleased to report it to the radio folks in Clemens. So should we get a chance to regionally dispatch, we have the horsepower. That's all I have, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. State Representative Ellen Cogan-Lipton is our guest tonight. We're always nice to see you. Would you like to say hello and share any updates from Lansing?
Good evening, Mayor Covey and members of council. It's good to see you all this evening.
Just to build on what Mr. Schmidt touched on, there's a lot of talk right now in Lansing, given some of the dire budget numbers that are coming down, $1.6, $1.7 billion deficit, how that's going to be managed. There are proponents of revenues, looking at additional sources of revenue, proponents of cuts only, proponents of looking at some combination of the two. One of the things that Marie Donegan from Royal Oak, in her committee, she chairs the Intergovernmental Committee, has been looking at is this notion of what the state can do to facilitate consolidation. And, you know, that's something that has been thrown out a lot in terms of, you know, a way of saving money. I'm not certain that is necessarily the be-all and the end-all. There is some notion that there are things that the state can do and should do to facilitate consolidation if it's something that is organic to the community. But there's some notion that forced consolidations may in fact be more costly, or the cost savings would certainly not fix the immediate budget crisis that we have right now, which is, as I said, about $1.7 billion. The cuts, having gone through the governor's January revenue estimating conference, the numbers are dire. And if we have to go through another cuts-only budget, as we went through last year, I'm very, very concerned about the health and well-being of our educational system and our system of social services, what we believe to be the social safety net. So I do believe that some discussion of revenues needs to be examined. That doesn't always mean necessarily a tax increase, because obviously in difficult economic times, that's a sort of a bitter pill to swallow. But one thing that I think that we do need to look more carefully at is our system of tax credits. We're at a point now where we are actually giving more in tax credits to particular businesses and special interests than we're actually taking in revenue. And the system has become really, really very, very skewed. And so I'm on a task force through the Tax Policy Committee to actually examine each tax credit that we give to analyze whether or not it works and whether or not it actually does, in fact, what it's supposed to do. And I do think that that's something that has to be examined with every proposal for reform, consolidation, waste elimination. There has to be a careful examination, I believe, of reforming a very, very skewed and unbalanced tax system. So I know that most, if not all of you, have my cell phone number, my office number. Please call me if there's any information I can get to you. I don't know if all of you are interested in reviewing the January Revenue Estimating Conference numbers. I can send it to all of you if you're interested in taking a look at the numbers that we in the state are going to be working with, because that's going to basically going to deal with how we actually appropriate the money over the coming months. So if I don't know if all of you are interested in getting that information, I'd be happy to send it to you. If there's any other information that I can get to you, I'd be happy to do that also.
Well, State Representative, I do know that everyone at this table would like to know your best estimate, even though you don't know for sure, as to whether or not we should expect further cuts in state revenue sharing. Is it too early to tell? Do you have any estimate? Is there a chance that we won't see any further cuts?
the governor has basically said that she will attempt to hold the school aid fund harmless. Did not say anything about revenue sharing cuts. And based on the numbers that I've seen, if we cannot get any new revenue, I don't see how you balance a budget that's $1.7 billion without making drastic across-the-board cuts. Now, there are a number of us in the House that do not think that cuts should happen across the board, that we have to maintain our priorities, which is education, social safety net, and our commitment to our cities. I don't know that that's necessarily going to win the day, but I can tell you that there are at least a group of people in the House that would reject any budget, myself included, that would cut revenue sharing even further, and would like to see some increases to revenue sharing. Whether or not we would necessarily be a majority in the House right now, I'm not sure, based on what happened last year.
Thank you. We appreciate all the work you could do to eliminate or prevent as much as possible further cuts in state revenue sharing to the cities. If I could ask one more, and then I'll turn it over. A lot of our business owners, you and I have talked about this, and if you could have your staff, as soon as the rules are promulgated with regards to the smoking ban on May 1st, which we're all supportive of in terms of businesses and restaurants and inside locations, but our clubs and restaurants are very interested in whether or not patios will be exempt, and my understanding, but it's just understanding, that if you're not serving food or drink on a patio, then a patio is permissible. But could you have your staff let us know as soon as possible so that we can disseminate that to the
Absolutely.
Restaurants, bars, and clubs and nightclubs in town?
Yep, that's my understanding as well, that it's the serving of food and beverage that triggers, as opposed to the structure, but I will confirm that.
Thank you kindly. What other questions do council members have for our state representative?
Ms. Lipton, thank you for being very available. You've always made your cell phone number and email available to us, and we appreciate that outreach. You know, I think I'm speaking to, you know, the choir, but, you know, our concern was the last time the governor said that she was going to hold state shared revenue harmless, we lost about $400,000. Things haven't gotten any better since then. Our current assumption is that state shared revenue is going to go from 3 to about 2.5 this year, and perhaps be eliminated altogether next year. And again, while I think you understand it, I hope you can bring the message from Ferndale out that 5 people isn't some sort of esoteric social safety net. It's 5 firefighters. Next year it's going to be perhaps 25 policemen. It's that drastic. That busts our budget in every way possible. So, you know, these people in the Senate who like to talk tough about, you know, law and order and all that type of stuff, for us on the south end of Oakland County, it's gotten to the point now where we're not, you know, eliminating, you know, some sort of crazy program that, you know, people could be critical of. We're talking about bodies in the fire department and police department. Without state shared revenue, there's absolutely, positively no way we can hold the line on our police and fire department. I know you know that, but
it bears repeating. I mean, there's so much talk about, you know, this sort of this mythical fat that needs to be trimmed, and you know, I'm not sure that people that are spouting that, the business community has been spending a lot of time in Lansing talking about, you know, how cities need to live within their means. You know, I'm not sure that they really understand what that means. And you know, I question the sincerity when, on the one hand, we're asking cities to do with less, and yet every time we try to eliminate a special interest tax credit, we're swooped down by, you know, that a special interest that would be affected saying, oh no, you cannot take away this credit. we'll just leave. So on the one hand, they've got their hand out, and on the other hand, they're telling everyone else that they have to do without. So it's really it's a really distressing, duplicitous situation.
And to share with you what we hear every week, we have people coming up here now on a regular basis asking us to raise their taxes to pay for police and fire services. And it seems to me that, we could do it maybe a 1.9, 1.7 mil public safety millage, or we could raise the income tax some small fraction of a percent and take care of this problem altogether. And it seems to me ridiculous to ask people in Ferndale who are already highly taxed to pay for services that are good to tax themselves further to pay for what should be a commitment from the state of Michigan to take care of the people here in Ferndale. So again, I know that you get it. It's just so frustrating to me when we hear people who are running for Attorney General running presumably on some sort of, family values, law and order type approach, and then cutting the legs out from underneath our police and firefighters. So, whatever type of effort we can support you in getting the word to Republican districts in the Senate, let us know, and we'll, what I've heard consistently is that nobody shows up for the firefighters and the policemen, everybody shows up for the schools. And, meaning nobody shows up for state shared revenue cuts, everybody shows up for school cuts.
Right. There does seem to be some truth to that.
Yeah. Well, we need to get the word out. If you can direct us, we'll help message on that.
Okay. I would appreciate that, definitely.
Thank you, Ellen.
Thank you.
It's very nice to see you. Take good care of
see you
yourself. Clerk Tallman, what do you have to say?
A couple of things, Your Honor. First of all, we have an official candidate list for the May 4th school board elections. For Ferndale Public Schools, we have Carol Frederick, Nancy Kerr-Mueller, William Charles Mosier, and Christy Stahl running for 2 seats. And in Hazel Park, we have William Love and Ricky Nagy running for 1 seat. That election, again, is May 4th. I'm sure you are all aware that this November on the ballot will be the question of whether or not the population wants general revisions to the state constitution. That will be on the ballot in November. If the voters approve a constitutional convention, there will then have to be an election for delegates, and the time frame for that would mandate that that election be either in February or May. Obviously, here in Ferndale, it would be best for us to have it in May since we already have school board elections in May, and we don't regularly have a February election. Along those same lines, State Senator Mickey Switowski has proposed legislation which would, among other things, mandate that all local elections, including school boards, be on the November odd-numbered year ballot. That would certainly help our position up here and help our school districts save some money. So I will be keeping an eye on that. I don't really expect it to get too far, but I think it's finally a step in the right direction. Other election legislation being proposed currently includes a measure to eliminate local canvassing boards. I just want to make sure you are aware that the Michigan Association of Municipal Clerks fully supports this legislation. It really, right now we canvass our local elections, whereas the county really has kind of a semi-professional canvassing board who canvasses elections 3 and 4 times a year. So their expertise, their skill, their knowledge is in constant use and probably much better suited than our local board. So I'm in full support of that. And that's it for me tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Tallman,
Yes.
it would save the city of Ferndale money if we did not have to have February and May elections. Is that correct?
It would save us time. We can currently bill the schools back for overtime and materials, but we can't bill them for our 8-hour workday that we are spending concentrating fully on school elections rather than focusing on implementing the council's goals for the city. So in other words, we spend that time working for the schools instead of for the city, but we cannot bill them for those regular hours.
Do you think it would save in any way, shape, or form? Would it save resources or money if May elections were eliminated? Or
Absolutely, it would save resources and it would save the schools money.
Because I
Which
saw
saves
Mr.
our taxpayers
I saw
money.
Mr. Swatowski's proposal, and I like it a lot.
I do too.
And I don't like February elections. There's one tomorrow, I believe, in Berkeley
Yes.
and Huntington Woods. And
Troy?
February elections, 90% of the people won't vote because they don't even know there's an election. But let me ask you one question. I met recently with Mr. Roselle, who's the Oakland County Director of Elections. He told me that a city like Ferndale could choose to opt out of managing the May school board election and turn it over to the county. And the county would then run it and build a school district.
Okay. That's an option.
Just thought I'd share that as an option. You probably knew that already. But
Did he seem amenable to that, to us using that option?
He did not seem unamenable.
Okay.
Again,
Point taken.
Just a thought.
Okay.
You know, whatever we need to do, we need to do. Mr. Bruner, City Manager, what do you have to share with us tonight?
Well, since the last time the council met, I took a brief vacation to visit my mother, and when I came back, I found that the governor had proposed a 2011 executive budget recommendation that maintains state shared revenue payments. And I had no idea that our state rep was going to be here tonight, so she's already kind of given you the scoop. But the reason that I thought it was important is because I've heard this story before. Last year, the governor introduced an executive budget that maintained state shared revenues, and as someone has already pointed out, the city is taking a $536,000 hit this year, which is due in large part to reductions by the state, but also in reductions in collections due to the poor economy. So I prepared a brief memo that I wanted to share with the council that showed last year's press release announcing maintenance of state shared revenue and this year's press release announcing the same, and also including a spreadsheet that shows the history of revenue sharing. Over the course of the last 10 years, the city of Ferndale's total statutory and constitutional revenue sharing payments have gone from $4.4 million in fiscal year ending 2001 to an estimated $2.2 million next year. So it's taken 11 years, but we finally gotten to the point where I believe it's going to be cut in half. So I'm projecting a cut of $400,000 in the city's next budget. Now, one of the reasons, and the folks at the council table know this, but for the folks in the audience and the folks at home, one of the reasons why this is problematic for the city is that the city's budget year begins on July 1st. So in March and April and ultimately in May, this body is going to have to adopt a budget for the year that begins on July 1st. But the state's fiscal year doesn't begin until October 1st. So that's when we'll find out how much state revenue sharing is going to be cut. Now, last year, or this current fiscal year that we're in, we over-budgeted state shared revenue. We didn't know what it was going to be. We underestimated how badly it was going to be reduced. So for this current fiscal year, the city of Ferndale is going to go over budget by about $500,000 a year, due in large part to reductions in state shared revenue that were not budgeted for. And that's a mistake that we can't afford to make in the coming fiscal year, because property tax revenue is also going to go down by more than $600,000 a year. So our margin for error is getting smaller and smaller. I asked our friends at the Michigan Municipal League what they thought about the prospects of revenue sharing. I appreciate our state rep giving her honest opinion. She didn't stand up here and lie to you and tell you everything was going to be okay, which would have been easy to do because she won't necessarily be here at the budget meeting when we have to make these decisions. But our friends at the MML basically said, well, look, the governor's revenue proposals have already been shot down by the Speaker of the House, and he seems to be headed towards cuts again. And someone's already made the point about how the Senate Republicans feel about revenues. So financial outlook for the city, not good. The state's budget problems certainly don't help, and the timing is incredibly problematic because the city has to guess in May what the state's going to do in October. So I think we've beaten that issue to death tonight now, but I did want to provide the council with that information on the city's revenue sharing.
Thanks, Mr. Berter. Anything else you wanted to share?
That's all.
Do you mind if I ask you a couple questions with regards to the budget?
Sure.
You gave us very dire information, all of us. It's public information with regards to how we might cut the budget by $3.1 million. Not necessarily recommendations, but options, choices, and we appreciate that. A lot in there. Real quick, I just want to ask you a couple questions, again, for the purposes of the audience as well. A lot of these cuts and reductions may or may not have to happen, some based on whether we are successful at working with the unions and any sort of concessions or givebacks that we can negotiate with the unions as far as cutting costs would reduce some of the changes we'd have to make.
I don't think it would be an overstatement to say that the city's ability to balance its next year's budget without personnel reductions is almost entirely in the union's hands. That 75% of the general fund budget is people, personnel costs. 88% of those people are union employees. You could eliminate me and every other non-union employee in the city and only save $1.5 million.
Okay, well, that's a good start. No, I'm kidding, of course. It's like the old lawyer joke, but I won't say it. Salary reductions, obviously 88% are union negotiations, but 12%. So in your report, there were discussions about reducing salaries for appointees and non-union staffers. That's on the table, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's on the table.
For us to discuss.
Yep. My approach is to, we've sent notification to the unions that the city wants to renegotiate its collective bargaining agreements. My intent is to meet with the unions, and whatever types of reductions the unions are willing to agree to, we'll implement the same for the non-union employees as well.
But, okay, and that's a good start. We could opt out for different, I mean, we as a council could do further things or make additional changes if we chose, correct? We could take the appointees and reduce their salaries by 10% if we chose.
Yes.
And non-union employees if we chose to.
Right. But as I said, you could eliminate all non-union and still only cut the deficit in half. And the payroll person happens to be a non-union employee, so I believe everyone else will stop coming to work on the first payless payday after that position's eliminated.
All right. Well, and we don't want payless paydays. I didn't see a lot, and maybe it was in there, about income, but we also have the option of looking at how to increase revenue, increase income, tickets written by the police, tickets that go to the court, fees, fines. That is something we could discuss as we get closer to May as well.
Yeah, the city's limited options are somewhat limited in terms of the fines and fees it collects. We can't charge more for most things than for most services than what it costs to provide. We've implemented fees for fire inspections in the past. We could look at increasing those, tweaking those. So I anticipate that'll be a part of the solution as well.
But, you know, if 50 parking tickets are written or another week 200 parking tickets are written, more income is generated by 200 tickets being written.
Yeah, and that was an issue that was brought up earlier. One of the issues that the City Council has to deal with in terms of the auto parking fund and parking tickets is that currently the people who write the tickets are paid for out of the auto parking fund. When you drop a coin in the meter, that coin helps pay for the officers. Mm-hmm. The revenue generated by the tickets they write goes into the city's general fund through the district court. Mm-hmm. And so if we add enforcement, we're basically robbing from the auto parking fund to pay the city's general fund, which is detrimental to the city's ability to finance a parking structure, but that's an issue that the council is going to have to deal with during the budget process.
We're going to let the staff figure that all out, because income is income, and we can figure out how to get the income where we need to get the income. But, for example, I'm told that our city writes fewer DUIs than most cities, that we have a low number of that. Even though we have all these clubs and bars, there's not very many of those written. Again, I don't know this, I've heard this. But we can look at ways to raise income.
Absolutely.
in including sales of land, and that's on your agenda to find if there's any land we have for
Yeah,
sale or property.
We have an inventory of city property that will talk about what could be liquidated.
Cars, trucks, Hummers.
Yes, all property, that is in real estate, real property, and personal property.
And I didn't see anything about furloughs, furlough days, Fridays, 4-day weeks. Is that something we should consider?
Well, as Wayne County has painfully recently learned, implementing furlough days without the agreement of the union that's affected can be very expensive.
I appreciate it. Thanks. Just again, wanted to make sure we were looking at everything and letting the people know we were looking at everything. Thank you for allowing me to do that. I wanted to ask if I could, what is our schedule? We have a lot of meetings coming up the next couple of months on budgets. When do we do staff evaluations, appointee evaluations?
We've postponed appointee evaluations until May after the budget's adopted this year.
Okay. That's all I wanted to ask for you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Christ?
Nothing tonight, Your Honor.
Nothing from the city attorney. Councilwoman Piana?
Two things. One, I am attending elected officials weekender training through the Michigan Municipal League. Newly elected officials are invited to take this training, and hundreds of newly elected officials across Michigan go to these trainings. And I just want to let people know what I'll be learning. To become a more effective councilwoman is about board governance, community relations, leadership skills, municipal finance, budgeting, all the important issues that all council members across the state of Michigan need to know to make these tough decisions. Also, I wanted to invite people to join my Facebook Councilwoman fan page. So if you are using Facebook to communicate with friends, I'm starting this as a way to communicate with residents of Ferndale to learn about what people would like to see from their council members in terms of information, events, policy issues. So please use that at your will. And also I wanted to start off tonight that one of my neighbors and I had a discussion about the city budget and the pending police and fire cuts, and she's been hearing it through the grapevine in the neighborhoods and in the paper. And she asked a really interesting question, and she goes, what did the city do with all its money? And so I really believe that there's a lot of misconceptions about how the city is using its finances, and I encourage the residents to come to city council meetings, ask all of us about how the city budget is managed, because it is complex, and this is part of the learning process our residents need to be part of, and to help us come to the conclusions that we need to do with these difficult cuts that we have to make. And so what I told her is, it's not about where our money's going, it's about what money isn't coming in. And so that really helped her understand some of the issues that we're dealing with right now in terms of the lack of revenue. So I am open, and please call me, email me. I'm very open to listening what you have to say about these budget cuts. Everybody is concerned. I am concerned, and I am opening, we're hearing from residents coming to us, please be aware and do everything in your power to limit cuts to police and fire. We're going to be able to keep what we can afford, and that's where we are, and I'm committed to this process and being open. And again, I'm available to talk and to learn from you as well what your concerns are.
Thank you. Councilwoman Baker.
It's sort of echoing what Councilwoman Piana was saying. The city of Ferndale, in addition to being required to have a balanced budget, we have worked and are still working to be fiscally responsible and sustainable as we go through this. You talk about living within your means. This is, kind of what living within our means looks like as a city when our revenues go down as drastically as they have over the last 2 years and will continue to. Recognizing, as we look at this budget process, that state that because of state tax law, our budget recovery will be at a much slower rate than what we hope the property tax recovery will be. So while your property values, we hope, will begin to go back up in the next few years, because of the way property taxes are levied in the state of Michigan, our budget will take a much, much longer time to recover. So we really are trying to look at the long term. Just to talk a little bit about where I come from and where I'm coming from when we look at these considerations and we look at these numbers, I really firmly believe that we need to look at the long term. We need to try and find a way to plan ourselves out of this recession. We need to consider strategic infrastructure improvements so that we can come out of the recession in a position to continue the growth of our tax base. Growing our tax base is the only way that we're going to increase revenues in the long term. Adding new businesses, adding new developments, freeing up land for development that's currently tied up. These are really the only ways that we can make Ferndale sustainable in the long term and bring our revenues back online. We've got legacy costs, just like businesses, pensions, medical expenses that we unfortunately aren't able to control. We're kind of at the mercy of being pulled in two directions. So again, just looking at the long term, what do we need to do to keep our city moving forward? How do we manage the budget that we have right now and the decreases that we're looking at over the next couple of years? That's the balance that I'm trying to strike. That's the balance that we as a council need to try and strike up here.
Thank you. Councilman Lennon. I have a resolution to read, Mayor. By the way, Byron, good job by the men and women over there at the DPW today for attacking that snow. You should tell when you're in Ferndale. Glenda Lee Sullivan, a longtime Ferndale resident and mother of Fire Captain Kevin Sullivan, passed away February 16, 2010. Mrs. Sullivan was born January 1st, 1931, to Henry and Mabel Wallace in Nashville, Tennessee. She was married to the late Ferndale Police Chief Patrick Sullivan, who she wed on June 18, 1959, at St. James Catholic Church here in Ferndale. Mrs. Sullivan was employed by the FBI in Detroit as a secured secretary and for the Ferndale Public Schools as an education specialist. She was an avid photographer, enjoyed arts and crafts, and spending time with family and friends, particularly at Monroe Lake. Glenda Lee Sullivan will be missed by many, but especially her son, Kevin and Shelley Sullivan of Pleasant Ridge, grandsons Dan and Heidi Crane, Michael Crane, Stephen Crane, and Jason and Kelly Crane. Great-grandchildren Nicholas, Jacob, Isabella, and Tristan. Siblings Ray and Patsy Wallace of Tennessee, Fran Gibson of Ferndale, and James and Joanna Wallace of Southfield. Brother-in-law and former Ferndale Police Chief Joe and Kathy Sullivan of Ferndale. Sister-in-laws Denise and Richard Zukowski of Florida. Susan Busanow of Royal Oak, and Judy and Fred Scipion of Florida. Many nieces and nephews, and dear friends James and Joe McCullough and the entire McCullough family. There be resolved that we, Ferndale elected officials, do hereby extend our community condolences to the family of Glenda Lee Sullivan, and further be resolved that a copy of this resolution duly certified be forwarded to the family. Do I have unanimous support on that?
Support.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Galloway.
Thank you, Mayor. Another in what's going to become a long line of speeches about the budget. When we were here last, I spoke about the city being between a rock and a hard spot, being between a situation where we can't raise any additional monies and can't easily or certainly painlessly cut our costs. What I've prepared this evening is just sort of a rough form here. Maybe the cable can zoom in on it or something. The city of Ferndale roughly has a $18 million budget, and we get the revenues for that from property taxes. That's just over $9 million. They're indicated in tax. In this section, we get $3 million from state shared revenue. We get about $1.5 million from the courts and approximately $800,000 from fire contracts with the city of Pleasant Ridge and Royal Oak Township. This section up here is just general revenues, represents less than a quarter of all revenues brought in by the city. The state of Michigan, it's our assumption, will shortly remove this section of the pie, $3 million, if the Senate Republicans have their way. And this is something, part of the pie, the revenue picture, that the city of Ferndale can't do anything about. We can't raise taxes. No one here is going to cut the taxes. But what happens is the millage rate to which, so while the millage rate stays fixed, what happens is the property valuations, the taxable value to which that millage rate gets applied, shrinks. And as that shrinks, this piece of the pie gets smaller. And that's something that we can't have, we don't have any control over. Court tickets, some variability, and the fire contract, very little variability. So the only piece of this pie that we have direct control, that's 100% political decision, is the state shared revenue. And our legislators in the Senate are choosing to eventually, over time, work that out of the equation. With that being worked out of the equation and taxes, our taxable value shrinking, I don't know about anybody else, but I got my property valuation. My home went down almost 20%, and I think if we look at valuations across the 9-county metro region, that's holding up pretty well, actually, that some places are going down by as much as 40 to 50%. So we're in for some tough sledding, and the options that are coming out of the Republican Senate calls for constitutional amendments, things that couldn't happen for years. Cut 5% of all public employee pay. That would save $1.2 billion. Well, great, except that's a constitutional amendment. That's not going to happen for several years, and realistically, the Senate knows that it's never going to happen. Require all public employees to pay 20% of their health care. That's Mr. Bishop's bright idea, I suppose. Constitutional amendment, save $610 million. Another great idea they had was to only provide Medicaid services not required by the federal government. So that, you know, is the old proverbial penny wise, pound foolish. It would, you know, reduce expenses that are preventative and encourage expenses that are emergency in nature. So essentially, we're getting no help from Lansing, anything that's going to get through. So, you know, the city is in a position where all we can do is cut costs, and we're required by law to have a balanced budget, and this council will adopt a balanced budget. So if people don't like the picture, the things that we're sending out here, certainly no one up here does, then they need to call Mike Bishop, and his telephone number is 517-373-2417. He's the House or the Senate Majority Leader, and he's also a candidate for Attorney General, and you would think that somebody who was running for Attorney General might care about police officers and law enforcement, but he's looking through his policies to dramatically cut their budgets. So if people care, we need to preserve state shared revenue, and the surest, quickest way to do that is to exert pressure, political pressure on the Senate Republicans, and you know, get someone who lives in a Republican district to call their senator, or call the Majority Leader himself at 517-373-2417. That's the direct action you can take to save our police and fire department. That's it this evening.
Great job. Great job, Councilman. I would like to just briefly thank or compliment new Councilwoman Piana. I saw you quoted in a news article. I think it was about the crosswalk on Woodward Avenue in Ferndale 115. You did a really nice job.
Oh, thanks.
Really nice job. I think you're going to do great with the media, as all of us up here do. And the only other thing I want to say is that there are 25 days until spring. No other business before us tonight. The meeting is adjourned.